Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we are going to explore how to meditate. With me is Professor Charles Tart, an emeritus professor of psychology at the University of California at Davis, and also emeritus professor at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. Dr. Tart is an old friend and a mentor, former faculty member of mine. He is the author of numerous books on consciousness and parapsychology and spirituality. These include the classic anthologies, Altered States of Consciousness and Transpersonal Psychology. He has a book of meditation called Mind Science, Meditation Training for Practical People. His other titles include Waking Up and Learning to Use Extrasensory Perception. Welcome, Charlie.
Oh, it's good to be here, Jeff, and it's going to be interesting. You know, I think of myself primarily as a scientist who in some strange way has become a kind of meditation and mindfulness teacher. But that's going to be interesting.
It will be, because as you described your own background, meditation was always very difficult for you.
I had given up attempting to learn to meditate sometime in my 30s because it was clear it took some special talent that I didn't have, so there's no point in even trying.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I didn't quite give up, but I think a lot of people have that experience.
Well, I remember the first time I tried to meditate, and I was expecting something special to happen. Nothing special happened at all, and now I've come to realize it's just fine. Something special doesn't have to happen.
Oh, that's pretty advanced. It is. Oh, yes, there were many attempts at meditation where I'd sit there and think, gee, it's been 10 minutes now and God hasn't stopped by to chat yet. What am I doing wrong? Well, meditation, okay. I'm going to talk about meditation in the broader context of mindfulness.
Okay.
Mindfulness both in a clearer perception of what's going on moment by moment, and mindfulness in the sense of understanding how your own mind is reacting and how it works.
Mindfulness has become a real buzzword these days. I know many people use it and use it very differently. So I'm glad you defined it, and it's also associated with a particular type of meditation called Vipassana, which I believe is one of the schools of meditation that you studied. I
didn't really define what I meant yet, though. Okay, and the basic problem is that both the words meditation and mindfulness are used in a wide variety of ways, as if it was a synonym that always meant the same thing. Remember when people talked about consciousness raising, which in my naive way I thought meant understanding your mind better, but I realized practically meant when you come around to see the way things I do, you've had your consciousness raised. That's politics and persuasion, but not what I want to talk about.
Okay.
So in a sense, what I'm talking about is if you're dissatisfied with the way your life is going, in some sense, I've included just about everybody so far, but you think that at least part of that dissatisfaction comes from the fact that you're treating your life unskillfully. You're not clear enough about what's actually happening, so you do the wrong thing. You have automatic habits of thinking and feeling and the like that mislead you. Then some kind of mindfulness or meditation training can be helpful.
So that you break out of that cycle.
Yes. Right. You can also get very interested in meditation and mindfulness training just out of curiosity. You know, I mean, Buddhism, talks about life is suffering. Yes, there's a lot of suffering, but sometimes life is pretty nice. But even so, I've always been curious about, why am I thinking that? Why did I say that stupid thing? Why did I do so well when I don't think I know how to do that actually? So curiosity is also another good reason to want to train your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the first step in learning meditation and mindfulness is getting a clearer idea of why. Why do you care? And how much do you care?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you think maybe in 5 minutes I can become God, good luck. I don't think it'll work, okay?
Uh-huh.
If you are curious enough or driven enough by trying to improve life that you're willing to put a substantial amount of time in on it
Mm-hmm.
and learn from your mistakes, because you'll make lots of mistakes, that's part of the learning process, then some interesting things can happen.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's take meditation, which in a formal sense usually means that you're going to sit still. There are moving meditations, but most of them you sit still. You don't react to every itch, right? Even though you know there'll be times when if you don't scratch that itch, you're going to die. And intellectually, you know nobody's ever died of not scratching an itch, but you know you're going to. Okay, you have to learn to deal with some of that. So it's going to involve sitting still and not reacting your usual way. Usually we react instantly to everything that happens. Every sensation we don't like, we scratch it or what have you. So sitting still is part of the discipline because it gives you more energy to focus on your mind. When you're scratching each itch, and you know this will be the last one, and I won't itch after that. Feed one itch, and they all grow. So you sit still, and you remind yourself of your aim. Why am I sitting still in a quiet place? What's the point of doing this? In a sense, you refresh your worldview. What do I want out of this? That does not mean a long, complex intellectual analysis of everything that might affect your life, but enough to say, okay, well, today I'd like to learn how to make my mind more peaceful, or today I'd like to learn how to let experience flow through me more easily without my interfering. I don't like that one, or more of this kind of thing.
So you're saying you need a goal?
No, there are some advanced meditations which involve no goal at all, but let's not go there yet. Okay. I'm a kindergarten meditation teacher. For people who are really serious and want to go a long spiritual way, they need really profound meditation teachers. But I'm a very good kindergarten meditation teacher.
Okay.
I'll get you started.
Well, kindergarten is the best, I think.
Yeah. And if you have a bad kindergarten experience, it's hard to do the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a lot of people will say you can't just sit there. You've got to sit there in some special position. And we all know the stereotypical cross-legged position. If you are flexible enough to sit in the full lotus cross-legged posture, wow. Are you a gymnast in your daytime job? Something like that? The people who sit in the lotus posture usually start out in cultures for which everybody sits on the floor, cross-legged. And the body kind of shapes itself to be relatively comfortable doing that. We're chair sitters. So most meditation teachers would say, you know, if you're sitting upright and you're not so comfortable that you can easily fall asleep, right? No lounge chairs. But you're not so uncomfortable that all you can do is grit your teeth the entire time and not do anything else. Now, something that lets you sit still, upright, focus on your internal processes. It's a good idea to decide ahead of time that you're going to meditate for a certain number of minutes and set a timer for that. So, because otherwise you'll sit there, I wonder how many more minutes I have to go. Oh, it must have been 10 minutes already, something like that. Set a timer. When I first started, we used the kind of parking meter timers they had, which could go up to an hour. Very handy. Now, sure, there's electronic timers. In fact, there are electronic timers which will sound nice bells.
Is there a minimum or maximum length of time you work with?
No. There are times when I sit down to meditate when my mind is so crazy that within a minute I say, you know, this is ridiculous. Go do something more useful. unless I'm really concerned with learning to control my mental state more, in which case I might stick it out for a longer period in something like that. But 5 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. I don't think there's any sacred scripture which specifies the time.
I know,
exactly.
TM became very popular because it was 20 minutes twice a day.
Yeah. And having a specified time like that, instead of having to decide each time, actually relaxes you some. It takes a little bit of stress off of how long should I do it. So that's all right. Then what are you going to do? Suppose, in formal meditation, there are two outstanding goals which you'll find in meditation systems all over the world. One is to learn to calm and rest your mind. And the other is to have insights into the way your mind works. If you want to learn something about calming your mind, then the most popular form for doing that is to focus on your breath. Usually there's no pattern of how you should breathe, but just notice how you are breathing. And again, some people like to focus on the movements of your belly. Some people like to focus on the little sensations of the air going in and out of your nostrils. But what you don't want to do is say, yeah, I got the nostrils. There's an interesting sensation in my ear. Maybe I'll focus on that for a while. Oh, but gosh, I really should be focusing on my belly. And you pick some goal and you want to rest your attention on it.
You don't want to jump around.
You don't want to jump around. And you don't want to strain generally, okay? There are some meditation forms that involve straining. Everything I say can have contradictions, but generally it's as if I want to look at this piece of sculpture here and take it in. I put my eyes on it, assuming it's an eyes open meditation. If I close my eyes, I open them again to bring it back in focus. And I don't sit there philosophizing about it or, oh, that reminds me of a stone I saw on the beach somewhere, blah, 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 blah. You'll do that all the time, of course, because our minds jump around.
It's going to happen anyway.
In fact, one of the most common reactions to learning meditation is people say, this is awful, it makes my mind race. It doesn't make your mind race. Your mind races all the time. You're just finally slowed down enough to notice it. And you may not like it at all.
Well, you mentioned eyes can be open. So
some meditation forms have your eyes open, some have them closed. Some adjust it to your state, okay? I prefer eyes closed meditation, but if I'm really sleepy, it's a good idea to keep my eyes partly open because the light coming in makes me a little more awake. On the other hand, if my mind is very jumpy and agitated, closing my eyes generally calms me a little bit almost immediately. But, if you're blinking open and closed every 5 seconds, you need more calmness somehow, okay? Do it short to begin with. Try it for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Incidentally, I have much more detailed information on this on the webinar. I teach on this, but I'm trying to give a very general picture.
Okay. Well, now let me ask you a question. Now, let's suppose I'm sitting down, I'm about to meditate, I'm going to focus on my breath, and then I discover my mind is racing.
Yep.
Okay.
Very likely.
What do I do then?
Focus on your breath. And then you discover you've forgotten all about your breath and your mind is racing. Focus on your breath.
You keep coming back to the central focus.
And I like to emphasize gently come back. It's not like, damn it, mind, stop that. I'm going to hold my attention on my belly no matter what. That'd just produce a lot of strain and stress. And you certainly won't calm your mind or rest it that way. You may have to bring it back after the first minute. You may have to bring it back after the first 2 seconds. But just gently bring it back.
I know there's a funny scene in the, I think it's Woody Allen's movie Annie Hall, where he's with his guru, and the guru is telling him, relax, and he keeps saying, I'm trying as hard as I can to relax.
It's persistence and keep trying, but not tension. Now, I said, you focused on, say, your breath, and you notice your mind has wandered and you're thinking about something else. There's a choice you can make at that point. Except sometimes it's not really a choice, it just happens. You can say, well, I got to understand why my mind wandered. You can now spend 10 or 15 minutes trying to figure out why your mind wandered, what events in your childhood led to it, and all that, and you're not paying any attention to your breath. The much more sensible choice if you want to learn concentrative meditation is, oh, my mind wandered. There's my breath sensation.
Because there is a
Just
tendency
come
to,
back.
if a thought comes up and then you get a chain of thoughts and you want to follow the chain, you might think, oh, I'm getting a creative insight. But that's not the purpose.
And it's a real problem. It was one of the main problems I had. My thoughts seduce me. I'm sitting there, I'm focusing on my breath or something like that. A thought comes along, and it's like a beautiful woman wandered into the room and said, "Hi, Charlie, you want to come with me?" And you'll have lots of thoughts later, okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry, your thoughts
Plenty
will come
of time
back.
for thinking.
Yes.
Elsewhere.
No shortage of thinking. So whenever you notice you've wandered, gently come back. Timer goes off, you're done. Now, if you want to, you can think about all the times you failed and feel guilty and beat up on yourself. I don't particularly advise that. Just notice, okay, maybe I did a little better today, maybe I did a little worse, but I sat here for 5 minutes and I didn't twitch all over, and I did come back to my breath once in a while. I'm slowly learning it. Now, you've learned to have your mind race for your whatever age you are. So you're not going to learn in 5 minutes how to really rest your mind. So you just practice it.
But it's not at all uncommon, to my knowledge, if you're sitting and meditating, every 5 to 10 seconds, some thought is going to bubble up.
Gee, they never took that long in my mind.
Faster even, yeah.
I used to make a note in my diary if I went for 2 seconds without a thought. If you can rest your mind absolutely and really deep experiences come, you need to find a serious meditation teacher, which means you'll have to get involved in some particular spiritual path probably. Okay? There are a few people who this stuff works great guns for them right off the bat. Okay, but most of us it's very difficult. Now I'll just sketch the other main style of meditation. It's ridiculous to try to cover it in a few minutes, but the other one doesn't involve resting your mind, but learning to gently observe your mind as it does its thing. And the rough theory behind it being, since your mind is racing, it's presumably in trying to do something. Maybe if you could add a little consciousness to it, it would do whatever it needs to do more efficiently and eventually get clearer because of that.
So, in other words, you're not going to focus on your breath. You're just going to watch your thoughts.
Now, don't jump to that too fast.
Okay.
That'll be very difficult. Usually, the way Shinzen Young showed it to me, for instance, which was very helpful, he said, notice any sensations in your body. Okay, if I was doing that now, there's a throbbing in both hands. My right leg has a little tension in the calf muscles. There's the throbbing in the hands again. There's a little painful sensation in the back of my head. And the way I'm trying to notice them is not grab them, not, oh, I think that's a spiritual sensation, I want more of it. Not, oh, that's a little bit of a pain quality, I'm going to look for another sensation, make that go away somehow. You try to develop a way of observing what's going on with some concentration, in the sense that you watch it for at least a half a second or a second rather than glance at it and go off and you're lost, you're wandering stuff. With concentration, with clarity, by slowing down slightly and looking at it with a little more concentration, it will usually become clearer, okay? So as I'm just talking to you, there was a vague realization of some kind of sensations in my hands, but when I actually turned my attention to it, they're very well-defined sensations. There's a pulse as part of that and whatnot. Not that you need to feel your pulse or something like that, but you're observing with more clarity what's going on, and you observe with equanimity. Okay? You don't grab at it or push away. You don't evaluate it. It is what it is. That can get very interesting.
But is it primarily bodily sensations?
Now, body sensations is an easy place to start. Your body is always with you.
Yeah.
Okay? If I say you start by observing the benevolence of God, huh? What do I look at? That's kind of vague and abstract,
Right.
okay? The sensations in your body. If you can't do your whole body, if that seems too complicated, just what's in your left hand, say, or your right thumb or something like that. But you're learning to gently keep your attention on a target, on an area, but it's an area where things are changing and flowing, rather than trying to fix it as just inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And this is eventually going to lead to more insights and be more useful in everyday life too, where all sorts of things are flowing all the time. You know, if you're being stressed out by a situation in life, you usually can't say, stop, I need to sit still, cross-legged, and focus on my breath for 5 minutes before I answer your question. It's not terribly practical most of the time, but if you're ready, if you can focus on this stressful situation with equanimity, okay, I'm not going to freak out, I'm not going to clap my hands, I'm going to look more clearly. That often solves a lot of problems right then and there. It's especially interesting with respect to pain. Shinzen expressed it very nicely that in a little equation, S equals P multiplied by R. S is suffering. Suffering is your psychological reaction.
Yes.
You know what suffering is. You've been there. P, pain, is the actual physical sensation, which can vary in intensity. And R is your mental resistance. Okay? You may have a little physical pain, but oh my God, I don't deserve it, and it's not fair, and I've been meditating. And you multiply pain by a lot of resistance. You can have enormous suffering from a very tiny pain. Or if you learn to let things flow with more equanimity, you may have pretty strong physical pains at times, and you don't suffer from them.
You don't suffer
it's a sensation, but I'm not freaking out about it and multiplying the suffering, and it's not a big deal. Now, you have to develop some skill before that's really particularly possible, of course. But
And as I recall, since, in fact, many years ago, courtesy of you, I interviewed Shinzen Young. He makes a point of saying, if in addition to the pain, notice if there's an attachment or an aversion to it, an emotion associated, and realize that that emotion isn't you, it's just an attachment or an aversion.
Now, you've just talked about upping the level of the meditation, so okay.
Beyond kindergarten.
At first, you just want to notice what these sensations are. Eventually, you'll be noticing them in more detail. Like I said, you know, if I pay attention, there was a boundedness to this sensation in my hand, and sometimes it got bigger and smaller and things like that. A lot of body sensations can get very interesting this way. Eventually, developing this most easily, not necessarily the only way, but most easily from the body, you may start to be able to apply it to emotions. Yes, I feel anger. That anger actually has several components, and part of it is a physical tension, and part of it is a fear sensation, and part of it is a jealousy sensation. Oh, that's interesting. And seeing different parts of it, you may understand it better, whereas with it's a mixture, it's got more control over you.
So in effect, this basic meditation method that you teach and that you've learned, it's not so different from a good application of old-fashioned introspection.
No, I don't want to equate it with old-fashioned introspection. You are looking inside and trying to understand things better. But applying these principles of concentration, clarity, and equanimity to it makes it different. And you're also doing it within an overall context, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Remember I said, find out why you want to learn meditation or mindfulness. Refresh yourself on that at the beginning. That overall context is having subtle effects on what you're actually doing. If I'm introspecting in order to report to a researcher how certain things feel, it's a whole different mental set than if I'm trying to deeply understand. Okay. Also, I should say that the way I teach this in my webinar course or in my books is to lead toward increased mindfulness in everyday life. You know, very few people ever got in trouble by what they felt and thought while they were sitting on a little meditation cushion, or sitting up in a comfortable straight back chair.
Right.
But we get in trouble all the time because we're not very mindful of how we're feeling and what we're saying in real life, and we say things that later, how could I have been so stupid as to say that? How thoughtless was I? No wonder she won't speak to me anymore. If you can bring more mindfulness to everyday life, it definitely reduces the suffering and increases your ability to do something effective both for yourself and to help other people.
The suggestion there seems to be that life itself can be a meditation.
Yes. I mean, Shinzen now formally defines meditation as anything you do applying the principles of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. Now, and incidentally, I'm primarily talking with Shinzen stuff here because it's very clearly understandable. There are other ways you can analyze meditation and how to do it and so forth. But he's a genius in having adapted this to, you know, if you get real good at this, you should find a teacher like Shinzen, not me. For getting started, I'm a good kindergarten teacher.
You're a good introductory teacher because, first of all, you're a psychologist, and second of all, you've studied with many meditation teachers along the way.
And third of all, I've had enormous difficulties in learning how to meditate, so I know what that feels like. There are a few people who I find absolutely disgusting. They get 2 minutes of instruction and they experience cosmic consciousness or something like that. It's not fair. They make it seem so easy. Well, you know, it's like in martial arts. Like when I was learning Aikido, sometimes the black belt teacher would demonstrate some technique, and I didn't get it, and I'd ask for an explanation, and he or she would demonstrate it again, and I still didn't get it because it was so natural and easy to them at their point of mastery that they didn't know the difficult spots. So I'd find some intermediate level student who had only learned to do it well recently, but who remembered the difficulties, who could explain it better.
Well, Charlie Tart, thank you so much for sharing this skill. This is a very valuable skill for people.
Well, I've just given some very basic hints to get started. I hope it motivates some people to give it a try or whatnot, and it can produce a general skill that could then apply in various other spiritual systems.
Thank you for being with me.
Our pleasure.
And thank you for being with us. I think this is an interview you might wish to share with some of your friends.